He's unflappable. We have been through so much as a family, as athletes, that he is prepared for everything. The only thing that really hurt me, when they started the line and saying he wasn't prepared or he was this or he came in with headphones on. I know my sheep. I know my son. I know what I raised. I know better than that. Shedeur ain't never did nothing stupid.
There's something undeniably raw unfolding inside the Cleveland Browns organization. Something that has transcended draft placements and preseason speculation. All eyes are now on Shedeur Sanders, and not for the reasons some might have assumed. What began as a silent undercurrent of doubt and rumors has erupted into a storm of attention, pushing one name repeatedly into the spotlight. Shedeur's not just a quarterback trying to make the roster. He's a symbol of everything the NFL says it values: grit, focus, preparation, and now that symbol is demanding to be taken seriously. At the center of this groundswell is Deion Sanders, a father, yes, but more importantly, a coach who's had a front row seat to every rep, every hardship, and every milestone in Shedeur's football journey. Deion didn't go viral for some flashy statement or staged media moment. Instead, his honesty spoke louder than any highlight reel. In the heat of NFL training camp discussions, he made it plain his son is not just built for this. He's been training for it his entire life. The noise surrounding Shedeur's readiness, fabricated. The talk of entitlement or unprofessionalism, baseless. Deion wasn't trying to win anyone over. He was stating facts from a place of deep experience. And behind the scenes, that experience was being put to the test. While headlines swirled and critics speculated, Shedeur was quietly making a pivotal decision. He didn't want the cameras. He didn't ask for hand-holding. He asked to be left alone, to put in the work, and to take the heat that came with being doubted. That wasn't arrogance, that was calculated determination. He knew the path he was on would be filled with resistance, and he chose to walk it anyway. For Deion, watching that unfold wasn't just a proud moment, it was a confirmation. Confirmation that all those years of hard coaching, of holding his sons to standards others might have shied away from, had built something solid. Shedeur wasn't looking for favors. He wasn't calling in family ties. He was out there demanding to be evaluated like everyone else. And now, as preseason nears, that demand is becoming harder and harder to ignore. Deion's energy surrounding the preseason was electric, not because of the usual excitement of getting back on the field, but because it represented a long-awaited turning point. There would be no hiding in drills, no dismissing talent with politics. The preseason would be raw, unscripted football, and Shedeur was ready to show the world what he's been keeping in his locker all along. This moment didn't arrive by accident. It came after weeks of Shedeur pushing himself when few were watching. It came after walking into training camp, knowing his name would be under a microscope, and choosing to lean into that pressure rather than shrink beneath it. The idea of being Deion's son may have opened some ears, but it was his quiet discipline that's begun to open eyes. What makes this situation even more compelling is how Deion operated during Shedeur's college days. There were no free passes, no inflated egos, no special treatment. When Shedeur fell short, he was benched. When his numbers didn't meet the standard, the consequences were immediate. That wasn't punishment, it was investment. It was the kind of demanding environment that forces a player to grow or give up. And Shedeur didn't just survive it, he thrived in it. Deion never coached his son like a parent trying to boost confidence. He coached like a professional preparing someone for the harsh realities of a brutal industry. Every rep was tracked. Every misstep was addressed. There was no "because you're my kid" loophole. It was always about being better, doing better, and never expecting less just because the last name matched. At Colorado and beyond, Deion implemented a system where quarterbacks were judged not by narrative, but by output. Throwing for 30%, that was a problem. It didn't matter who you were or what media buzz followed you. Performance spoke louder than potential. And this wasn't something Deion applied only to outsiders. It was a principle that hit even closer to home when it came to Shedeur. That clarity of leadership, of establishing firm boundaries between family and football, is rare in today's NFL culture. And it's working, because right now, Shedeur isn't being carried by reputation. He's being propelled by results. The data coming out of training camp backs it up. His throws, sharp. His reads, efficient. His demeanor, unshaken. Now, with media figures beginning to weigh in more publicly, the momentum behind Shedeur's rise is intensifying. One of the loudest and clearest endorsements came from Nick Wright, whose reputation for dissecting quarterbacks is well established. Wright didn't sugarcoat anything. He compared Shedeur to quarterbacks currently occupying more secure positions on rosters and didn't hesitate to call out what he saw as a flawed hierarchy. In Wright's eyes, names like Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco weren't just underperforming, they were taking up space that players like Shedeur, with actual upside, should be filling. Pickett, he argued, had already been given multiple chances to show he was the future and had failed to deliver. Flacco, his era was over. Whatever leadership he could offer was better served on a sideline, not under center. Wright's tone was sharp, but his message was clear. There's a new generation coming, and Shedeur deserves a real shot to lead it. Even Dillon Gabriel, who has generated some buzz as a developing talent, wasn't spared from scrutiny. Wright acknowledged his intelligence and mechanics, but pointed to his size as a real concern. In a league that demands a certain level of physical durability, being undersized isn't just a minor disadvantage, it can be a deal breaker. And if you're stacking resumes, Shedeur's body of work, combined with his frame and field vision, makes a compelling case. From training camp stats to intangible leadership traits, the evidence kept stacking. Whether you believed in analytics or went off gut instincts, Shedeur's presence was undeniable. He wasn't just keeping up, he was outperforming expectations. And in a sport that rewards consistency above all else, that mattered. Day after day, he kept showing up and showing out. What makes Shedeur's emergence even more fascinating is the psychological edge he brings to the game. He's not walking into these reps looking to impress anyone with theatrics or flash. His focus is razor sharp, and that tunnel vision rooted in years of strict discipline is translating into consistent execution. While others flinch under media pressure or scramble to make headlines, Shedeur is earning respect the old-fashioned way, by doing the work and letting the results speak for themselves. This isn't just about athleticism, this is about poise. It's about leadership. It's about the type of quarterback who walks into the huddle and commands attention without raising his voice. Shedeur's maturity in the pocket isn't something you teach at a training camp. It's something that gets built through years of being tested, challenged, and held to standards higher than anyone else on the field. And those standards weren't optional for him, they were required. That's the culture Deion created long before the NFL spotlight arrived. Shedeur's decision-making has also drawn attention for the right reasons. Whether it's identifying defensive schemes or adjusting mid-play, his instincts are polished. He's not rattled by speed or blindsided by blitzes. He studies the game, he anticipates, and he reacts like someone who's already seen the outcome. That type of preparation doesn't come from film study alone. It comes from an environment where expectations are never lowered just because it's hard. It comes from a coach who never gave him a safety net, and that environment was built by Deion Sanders from the ground up. From youth football all the way to the NCAA, the same mantra echoed: effort is non-negotiable. If Shedeur ever slacked, he was called out. If he missed throws, he was corrected publicly. There were no coddling speeches or motivational sugarcoating. There were standards, and Shedeur either met them or watched someone else take the reps. That ruthless consistency is now baked into his approach, and it's showing up at the perfect time. Even in interviews and behind-the-scenes reports, Shedeur's personality has struck a chord. He's calm, composed, and unfazed by distractions. There's no bitterness about being overlooked in the draft. No resentment about where he starts on the depth chart. His only concern is what he can control. That mindset detached from ego but fully locked into self-accountability is rare in any rookie, let alone one carrying his father's legacy. And speaking of legacy, that shadow looms large, but it doesn't intimidate Shedeur. In fact, it's clear he welcomes the challenge of creating his own name. He's not leaning on nostalgia or borrowing credibility from his dad's Hall of Fame career. He's rewriting the family script with each pass, carving out a new identity rooted in grit, not glamour. Every time he steps on the field, it's not about proving he's worthy of the Sanders name, it's about proving he's earned the right to carry it forward. As Deion put it plainly, there's never been a blurred line between family and football. On the field, he's not dad, he's coach. That line has never shifted, not in high school, not in college, and not now as Shedeur approaches the NFL stage. And because of that clarity, Shedeur never expected things to come easy. That separation wasn't emotional, it was professional. It was meant to show him that life doesn't hand you anything just because of who you are. If you want it, you better earn it. That clarity has led to something else: hunger. A very specific kind of hunger. The kind that doesn't just aim to make the team or earn backup reps. The kind that wants the ball, that wants responsibility, that wants to walk into a locker room, look veterans in the eye, and say, "I belong here." That drive is what sets Shedeur apart from others in his position. He's not waiting for an invitation, he's acting like he already has the address. And the league is starting to notice. The preseason, often seen as just a tune-up for most franchises, holds a different weight in Shedeur's case. It's his battlefield, his audition, his chance to show not only the Browns, but the entire league that he's more than a late-round pick, that he's not a storyline to be shelved. Every throw he makes is a statement. Every drive he leads is a reminder that potential means nothing if it's not backed by performance. It's clear that Shedeur isn't chasing clout, he's chasing execution. His stats in practice aren't flukes. His reads aren't lucky guesses. His presence in the pocket isn't an act. These aren't isolated flashes of potential. This is a pattern, a blueprint, a quarterback building a case so strong that even those who doubted him are being forced to reassess. And perhaps the biggest difference between Shedeur and the others is that his preparation isn't for show. There's no facade. He's not selling confidence. He's radiating readiness. While some rookies are still adjusting to the pace and expectations, Shedeur has already internalized what it takes to lead. He doesn't need to be told how important the reps are, he fights for them. He doesn't need to be reminded of the stakes, he lives them every day. Behind the scenes, coaches and staff have reportedly taken note of his demeanor. He shows up early, he leaves late, he stays quiet when the cameras come out and locks in when the film rolls. That approach, while not as headline-grabbing as flashy quotes or viral moments, builds trust. It builds equity in locker rooms. It builds the kind of reputation that turns rookies into captains. And while others might buckle under the pressure of comparisons, Shedeur thrives under them. His responses aren't defensive, they're demonstrative. He's not trying to convince anyone with words. He's using routes and progressions and tight window throws as his arguments. And those arguments are getting harder and harder to ignore. What makes this moment even more compelling is the resistance he's still facing. There's no shortage of voices trying to frame him as a backup, a long-term project, or a player meant to develop quietly behind the scenes. But Shedeur is refusing that narrative, not by pushing back in interviews, but by delivering on the field. And the narrative shift is happening in real time. Nick Wright's critique of the quarterback hierarchy is just the start. Fans are noticing, journalists are noticing, and more importantly, coaches are being forced to reconcile with the numbers. Shedeur isn't just surviving camp, he's elevating it. He's changing what the reps mean. He's challenging the assumptions baked into draft boards and veteran loyalty. As camp continues, the contrast between Shedeur and the competition becomes even more pronounced. While others still search for rhythm or show flashes without consistency, Shedeur keeps stacking days, not just with throws, but with leadership, with accountability, with calm under pressure. And it's that consistency that's beginning to shift conversations inside team rooms, not just outside them. It's not about highlight throws, it's about repeated excellence. It's not about dominating a single session. It's about showing up every day with the same laser focus. In a league built on trust, habits matter. Coaches don't just want the guy who shows out in shorts, they want the one who shows up in December. And the more reps Shedeur gets, the more it becomes clear he's not here for a feel-good story. He's here to rewrite the depth chart. And that depth chart isn't just symbolic. It's a snapshot of trust, of opportunity, of who the franchise believes can lead when it matters. The more Shedeur rises, the more difficult it becomes for the Browns, or any team watching, to ignore the ripple effects of what he's doing. He's not just checking boxes, he's building a resume with every rep, one that says he's ready now. Beyond just arm strength and poise, it's the details that have begun to set him apart. His footwork, his timing, his ability to reset under pressure. Those are the things that usually take rookies months or years to master. But Shedeur's already done that homework. He's already been in systems that demanded precision. He's already had a coach who refused to accept anything less than championship-level execution. And as Deion has continued to say, that tough love wasn't personal, it was preparation. Every hard practice, every critique, every moment where Shedeur had to fight for playing time, even when it came from his own father, was just sharpening the edges. It wasn't about breaking him, it was about building a quarterback who doesn't just react to pressure, he thrives in it. That investment is paying off in real time. And the more analysts start comparing resumes, the harder it becomes to justify keeping him on the bench. The developmental label is starting to crack. The rookie learning curve excuse is losing power. And that's because Shedeur has done what few expected. He's erased the gap, not just between himself and the other rookies, but between himself and the veterans. For years, teams have claimed to prioritize the best player, the one who gives them the greatest chance to win. And right now, Shedeur is forcing them to prove it. If the Browns want credibility in their quarterback evaluation, they have to look at what's unfolding without bias. They have to be willing to admit that draft pedigree doesn't always predict leadership, that age doesn't always equal upside, that sometimes the best player on the field just happens to be the youngest. And it's not just a team issue anymore, it's a league issue. Because if Shedeur continues this trajectory through the preseason, there's going to be pressure from all corners, media, fans, even players for him to start. Not as a favor, not as a marketing strategy, but because he's earned it in the purest sense. On tape, on the field, in the locker room, there's no denying that the spotlight has intensified. But what's striking is how Shedeur hasn't flinched. There are no cracks in the armor, no panicked decisions, no rookie mistakes piling up, just a steady stream of execution, day after day. He's handling the storm like someone who's been through it before because, in many ways, he has. That calm demeanor, forged from years of public attention and private expectations, is giving the Browns something they didn't plan for, an option they can't ignore. The plan might have been for Shedeur to sit, to wait, to develop quietly, but he's not following that plan. He's rewriting it, and with every snap, he's making that rewrite more permanent. It's becoming clear that Shedeur isn't just an asset, he's a problem for the current system, a challenge to the comfort zones of the decision makers. Because to keep him off the field now would be to admit that politics still matter more than performance. And that's a hard sell when the film shows otherwise. Every week, the argument grows louder, not from talking heads or hot takes, but from the footage, from the data, from teammates who feel the energy shift when he's under center, from coaches who can't deny the difference in tempo, execution, and confidence when Shedeur runs the offense. And Deion, he's watching, not as a dad desperate for his son's success, but as a coach who's seeing the result of a blueprint that never bent, a system that pushed when it was easier to comfort, that demanded when it was easier to protect. And that system has produced something that every team claims to want: a quarterback who doesn't just play the position, but embodies it. As the preseason approaches, the stakes are no longer theoretical. The film room is watching, the depth chart is under review, and Shedeur Sanders is standing right in the middle of it, not asking for a chance, but taking it. This isn't about hype anymore. This is about results. This is about a player who refused to let his last name define him, and who's now using every rep to define himself. And it's working.